Hello, history buffs, time travelers, and scholars. The Wild West was a time of cowboys, gunfights, and untamed adventure. But beyond the dusty trails and saloon showdowns, it was also full of truly bizarre and absurd things that most people have never even heard of. From strange inventions to outrageous laws and jaw-dropping tales, the Wild West was anything but ordinary. Elmer McCurdy's post-mortem adventures outshone his brief career as a criminal. In 1911, McCurdy mistakenly held up a passenger train, expecting a fortune, but escaping with just $46. Shortly after, lawmen shot him dead. His unclaimed body was embalmed with arsenic and sold to a traveling carnival, becoming a sideshow attraction. For decades, his mummified remains passed through haunted houses and wax museums, ultimately ending up in a Long Beach amusement park. In 1976, during the filming of The $6 Million Man, a crew member discovered his prop was a real corpse. Finally, McCurdy was laid to rest in Dodge City's Boot Hill Cemetery, 66 years after his death. In 1856, the U.S. Army launched the Camel Corps experiment in Texas, reasoning that camels, accustomed to desert climates, would thrive in the arid Southwest. They imported 66 camels from the Middle East, finding them hardy but temperamental. They spat, regurgitated, and often refused orders. The experiment ended with the Civil War, as Confederates captured Camp Verde, and most camels were sold off or escaped into the wild. Sightings of these feral camels persisted into the 20th century, with the last report emerging in 1941. Billy the Kid wasn't left-handed, the legendary outlaw. Billy the Kid was long thought to be left-handed, thanks to a famous tintype photograph showing his gun belt on his left side. However, tintype cameras reversed images, meaning the photo was a mirror image. Additionally, Billy posed with a Winchester Model 1873 rifle, which only loaded on the right side. This proves the outlaw, born William Bonney, was actually right-handed. America's gold rushes began in the East. The 1849 California Gold Rush wasn't America's first, or even second gold rush. In 1799, Conrad Reed found a 17-pound gold nugget in North Carolina, sparking the nation's first rush and prompting Congress to build the Charlotte Mint. A second gold rush hit Georgia in 1828 before the California Frenzy began in 1848. Each rush reshaped the nation's economy and inspired countless fortune seekers. The truth about the OK Corral gunfight, the infamous 1881 gunfight at the OK Corral, involving the Earp brothers, Doc Holliday, and several cowboys, was neither a lengthy shootout nor within the corral itself. The battle, lasting just 30 seconds, occurred near Tombstone's Fremont Street, behind the OK Corral. Despite its brevity, the skirmish left 3 cowboys dead and solidified its place in Wild West lore. The Long Branch Saloon, from legend to reality. Fans of Gunsmoke will recognize the Long Branch Saloon, a fixture of Dodge City, Kansas. The real Long Branch, which served sarsaparilla, lemonade, and alcohol, burned down in 1885. Rebuilt as a tourist attraction, the saloon now entertains visitors with live performances, blending Wild West history with Hollywood nostalgia. The Civil War's Western Front, the Battle of Glorieta Pass. The Civil War wasn't confined to the eastern states. In 1862, Confederate General Henry Hopkins Sibley attempted to seize Colorado's gold by marching through New Mexico. His ambitions were crushed at the Battle of Glorieta Pass, dubbed the Gettysburg of the West. Union forces, aided by local ranchers, burned the Confederates' supply train, forcing them to retreat to Texas. This decisive clash marked the end of Confederate ambitions in the West. Whiskey, the West's fiery drink. In the Old West, whiskey wasn't just a drink, it was an experience so intense that it earned the nickname firewater. To impress Native Americans, sellers would toss the whiskey into flames to show off its high alcohol content. This wasn't your typical liquor, though. Made from burnt sugar, chewing tobacco, and raw alcohol, it packed a serious punch. Even the toughest gunslingers felt its effects, with just one shot proving why it was considered the most dangerous drink of the time. Frank James, the other ruthless brother. While Jesse James is often the name that comes to mind when talking about Wild West criminals, many believe his older brother, Frank James, was even more dangerous. Together, they led the notorious James Younger gang, which carried out violent robberies that left bank employees and civilians dead. After Jesse's death in 1882, Frank decided to surrender, famously saying, "I literally lived on the saddle. I never knew a day of perfect peace." Frank was tried for his crimes but acquitted, spending his last 30 years living a quiet life and working various jobs until his death in 1915. The gruesome legacy of Big Nose, George Big Nose. Parrott was a notorious outlaw of the Old West who met a chilling end. After being hanged by a mob in 1881, his body was handed over to John Eugene Osborne, a Wyoming doctor and politician. Osborne used Parrott's skin to make a pair of boots, which he famously wore when he became the state governor. Parrott's skin was also turned into a briefcase, while his skull was halved and used as an ashtray, doorstop, and even a pencil holder by Wyoming's first doctor, Lillian Held. Adding to the macabre story, Osborne and a colleague used Parrott's brain to study potential links between brain structure and criminal behavior. John Wesley Harden's unforgiving temper. John Wesley Harden, one of the deadliest gunslingers of the Old West, claimed to have killed 41 people. After serving over 20 years in prison, he was killed from behind in 1895 by John Selman in a saloon in El Paso. Harden's violent streak was evident in 1877 when he was disturbed by loud snoring in a hotel room next door. Frustrated, he shot through the wall, killing the farmer sleeping on the other side without ever waking him. The chaos of Fort Griffin, Texas, was a hotspot for Wild West activity, located near the meeting point of Clear Creek and the Brazos River. This unruly settlement, known as Babylon on the Brazos, drew an eclectic crowd of cowboys, gunslingers, buffalo hunters, gamblers, and more. Legends like John Wesley Harden, Doc Holliday, and Big Nose Kate passed through its streets, making it a symbol of the Wild West's lawless and lively spirit. Black Bart, the poet robber, Charles Bowles, famously known as Black Bart, was no ordinary stagecoach robber. Born in England and drawn to the U.S. during the 1849 gold rush, he later turned to robbing Wells Fargo stagecoaches. Unlike other outlaws, Black Bart had a flair for poetry and manners. After emptying safes, he left behind rhyming verses as his signature. Over his criminal career, he carried out 28 robberies, served time in prison, and eventually retired to New York, where he passed away in 1917. James "Killer" Miller, known as Deacon Jim, Miller was one of the Wild West's most feared outlaws. Officially accused of killing 14 men, rumors suggest his true victim count could be as high as 50. Miller's most controversial act, many believe he was behind the murder of Pat Garrett, the man who famously killed Billy the Kid. Despite his violent reputation, Miller was a devout Methodist who neither drank nor smoked. He even helped officiate church services. His reputation for invincibility was partly true. He survived 4 gunshot wounds to the chest, thanks to a steel plate worn as armor. However, his luck ran out in 1909 when he was hanged for his crimes. A walking contradiction, the killer deacon left an unforgettable mark on the Old West. Charles Kennedy, in 1870, a traveler took a break at a rest stop in New Mexico, managed by Charles Kennedy and his wife Rose. Their 5-year-old son innocently warned the traveler that his father was a murderer. Tragically, the warning became reality when Kennedy killed the traveler and then his own son to silence him. Over time, Kennedy murdered countless travelers for their belongings, leaving behind a chilling legacy in the Wild West. The Bloody Benders, the Bender family, John, Elvira, Katie, and John Jr. operated an inn in Kansas during the 1870s. When locals investigated a string of disappearances, they uncovered bodies buried in the family's basement. Though the Benders fled, their crimes became legend. Katie, the only survivor, later died in a fire. Their tale remains one of the most gruesome in Wild West history. Wild Bill Hickok, a gunslinger's final hand. James Butler. Wild Bill. Hickok was a legend of the Wild West, known as much for his sharpshooting as for his caution. Always vigilant, he made it a habit to sit with his back to the wall, especially at saloons like the Nutella and Mance Saloon in Deadwood, South Dakota. However, fate had other plans in 1876. Jack McCall, a disgruntled gambler, approached from behind and shot Hickok in the head while he held a hand of aces and eights, forever known as the Dead Man's Hand. Hickok's sudden death marked the end of an era and sealed his legacy as one of the West's most iconic and tragic figures. Big Nose, Kate, a daring rebel of the Wild West, Mary Catherine Haroni, better known as Big Nose Kate, defied societal norms with her audacious spirit. Born into a wealthy family in Hungary, her life took a dramatic turn when she was orphaned and eventually made her way to Texas. There, she met the infamous Doc Holliday, forming a volatile but legendary partnership. Kate's fearless nature shone brightest when she set fire to a barn to create a diversion and free Holliday from jail. Despite her tumultuous life, Kate remained a symbol of resilience and resourcefulness in the Old West, embodying the daring independence that defined the frontier spirit. The versatile cowboy scarf, a frontier survival essential. In the Wild West, a simple scarf wasn't just a fashion statement. It was a lifeline. Cowboys relied on scarves for protection from the harsh elements, using them to shield their faces from dust storms and their necks from sunburn. These multi-purpose accessories also served as masks during daring robberies, impromptu tourniquets, or even slings for injured arms. The iconic bandana, often red or patterned, became a symbol of the rugged, resourceful cowboy, proving that even the simplest tools could mean the difference between life and death on the frontier. Poker Alice Ivers, Queen of the Cards. Alice Ivers, better known as Poker Alice, was a trailblazing gambler whose life was as thrilling as the games she played. Born in England, she moved to Colorado in 1865, where she learned poker from her first husband. After his death, Alice took to the tables full-time, charming players with her wit and skill. Her fame peaked when she won $6,000 in a single night, a staggering sum in the 19th century. But her fortune took a dark turn in 1910 when she fatally shot a soldier during a saloon altercation. Though this incident ended her gambling career, Poker Alice remains a legendary figure of the Wild West, remembered for her courage and mastery of the game. Pearl Hart, inspired by a Buffalo Bill show, Canadian-born Pearl Hart ventured to Arizona and became a stagecoach robber with her husband, Joe Wood. In 1899, their heist ended in disaster when they got lost and were caught. As the first woman to commit, and survive, a stagecoach robbery, Pearl became a legend. Her 18-month imprisonment, cut short due to a lack of facilities for women, only added to her mystique. Akoma Pueblo, America's oldest settlement. Before Jamestown or Plymouth, there was Akoma Pueblo, located west of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Known as Sky City, this Native American settlement has been continuously inhabited since the 12th century. Perched atop a 365-foot mesa, it remains home to around 4,800 Akoma people. Once hunters and traders, the Akoma now generate income through a cultural center and a casino complex. Interestingly, the oldest U.S. state capital is nearby Santa Fe, which recently marked its 400th anniversary, showcasing the region's rich history. The first cowboy star wasn't a cowboy. The Western film genre owes its origins to a man who never wrangled cattle. Maxwell Henry Aronson, better known as Bronco Billy Anderson, was born in Arkansas in 1880. After moving to New York City, he became a pioneer of cinema, acting in or producing hundreds of films. His breakout role in the 1903 classic The Great Train Robbery inspired him to craft the Bronco Billy persona, making him the first cowboy matinee idol. Anderson's legacy paved the way for generations of Western stars, even if he wasn't a cowboy in real life. Jesse James, the outlaw with two graves. Jesse James' larger-than-life persona didn't end with his death. After being assassinated, the infamous outlaw was buried in his Kearney, Missouri, front yard to deter grave robbers. Years later, his family moved his remains to Mount Olivet Cemetery in Kearney. Yet, a man named J. Frank Dalton claimed in 1948, at age 101, to be the real Jesse James, going so far as to legally adopt the outlaw's name. Dalton's grave in Granbury, Texas, only fueled the mystery. Decades later, DNA testing confirmed James's body rests in Kearney, but his legend endures in both towns. The Wild West was a time of legends, where larger-than-life figures roamed the frontier, each with a story more captivating than the last. From daring gunslingers like Wild Bill Hickok to resourceful pioneers like Big Nose Kate and Poker Alice, these individuals shaped the rugged spirit of the era. Even the humble cowboy scarf tells a tale of survival and ingenuity, reminding us that every detail of the Old West had its role in creating an enduring legacy. If you enjoyed these fascinating stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of history, adventure, and the untamed frontier. Hit that notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Until next time, keep your spirit as bold as the Wild West itself.